Hello, everyone, and we are live for the Devreal Show. And today we're bringing you the first installment of our Tech for Good episode, which I'm very excited about. My name's Ellie King, and I'm going to be your host. And today we are joined by four incredible speakers who are working with Tech for Good, which is the intentional use of technology to try and have a positive, measurable impact on the world. So they're going to be speaking about some really important issues they're looking to tackle through sustainable urbanism, improving counselling for children, working on destigmatising mental health, and preventing and treating cancer and other chronic illnesses. And this is using technology like computer vision, AI, mixed reality, 5G, NLP, data science. I mean, the list does go on. But each presentation is going to be 15 minutes long, and then it's going to be a very interactive session. So after each talk, we're going to have a Q&A, and we want to hear from you. So please be sure to fire in your questions. Our speakers want to answer them for you. And to be honest, after what has been a really tough year and a half, what with everything going on in the world, I, for one, am really excited to celebrate an evening of positivity. So welcome to the Tech for Good Devreal installment. Now, I'd like to introduce our first speaker. We have Kat Anderson, and Kat Anderson is the founder and CEO of a startup that's creating a mobile health app called CatScan. And this leverages computer vision and augmented reality to allow you to see what's inside foods and other products to help you prevent and treat health conditions that affect millions of people around the world. So this is things like cancer, diabetes, heart disease, to reproductive issues and mental health concerns. Kat, it's such a pleasure to welcome you.
Such a pleasure to be here. I'm so excited.
I guess I should say good morning as well, because you're all the way over in the States.
So yeah, so we're having a...
I think there's a few connection issues from my side, but Kat, are you happy to load up your screen?
A little bit what's inside a body. Well, CAT scan. Am I cutting in and out?
You are a little bit, Kat. Yes, the connection's a little bit glitchy. It wouldn't be a virtual event without some kind of technical difficulty, right?
Oh yeah. All right. Well, I guess we'll see what happens. Okay. So anyway, and CAT scan, the name. So we are trying to help people to see what's inside foods and products, or if a product or food has a toxin. Also, CAT scan is also a throwback to how this first started, and so I'll take you right there. I was inside my doctor's office. It was just a routine visit, and the doctor comes back and says to me, we found a suspicious lump, and it looks like you might have cancer. And I was shocked. Cancer doesn't run in my family. I live an extremely healthy lifestyle, and so I asked her, how could this have possibly happened? And she explains it every day. And these toxins can appear in our foods and other products that we use every day. And I stopped right there. I said, I don't think you understand. I am very vigilant. I don't get anything with artificial ingredients or parabens. And then she stopped me and said, listen, just because something says it's all natural or even organic in some cases, that doesn't mean that it doesn't contain carcinogens. And I said, how is that possible? And the way she explained it is that regulators have decided that when it comes to some toxins every day, most of us use multiple products every day, and we eat multiple things every day. So a trace here, a trace there, it can add up, and it can lead to an accumulation to the point where we end up with a health condition like cancer. So my first question is, okay, well, just give me the list of toxins so I can go home and make sure I'm not ingesting these. There's hundreds.
Looks like we're having some technical difficulties. I think, Kat, what we'll do is we'll come back to you because it's super glitchy and you've got such an important story to share. I don't want anyone to miss anything. So hopefully we can get these technical connections sorted out and we can come back to you. So I'd like to welcome to the stage Prayson. Now, Prayson brews up machine learning algorithms with a pinch of math and an ounce of Python and piles of data to help communities gain AI competitive advantages by growing revenue, slashing production timelines, multiplying efficiency, and making data-driven decisions. He is here to talk to us about how they are helping a child welfare organisation multiply their efficiency in helping children with different issues. So Prayson's going to focus more on the ethical side of build machine learning algorithms that are ethical. The stage is yours, Prayson. I think you're muted, Prayson.
Oh, classical, right? Very, very classical. But I was just saying, thank you. Such an introduction. I don't know if I can live up to it, so I will just try to do my very best. So I will begin by sharing my screen, just like that. And just going to share it. And I'm going to just bring, my classical PowerPoint is Paint. So this is my board of where I get to explain things. So thank you so much for actually such a great event, and it's such a privilege for me to speak in such a topic that interests me very much. It interests me very much because it's all about bringing technology for good. So we usually start with something very classical, like so we have this brilliant philosopher and a theologian and a mathematician, Blaise Pascal, and in his Pensée, he actually had this, that all men seek happiness. Right? This is without exception. And this kind of philosophy is also echoed in American independence, the Declaration of Independence, right? Like we are somehow have this unalienable rights, that among this is life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. So the whole drama around here, how do we build AI for our happiness? Like, how do we build AI for the good of our well-being? So in this case, how do we go about making sure that the tools that we are creating are here to save us, are here to actually push us into this path of happiness, and what we call this the well-being of our society as a whole. And this is about bringing working with technology for good. So I will come to this brilliant project that we have a privilege to be involved. So to put the story short, is that here in Denmark, there is an organization which is there to help children with different problems. So a lot of kids will call in and chat and do all this kind of communication looking for help. Of course, all these children are coming anonymously. So the only thing that we have is the interaction that they have with counselors. So because there is a streaming a lot of kids with different problems, and we have lack of counselors to help them, they stay in a queue for a really long time. In this case, they discovered that they were missing a lot of children in these waiting processes. And also, even whenever they get into interaction between a child and a counselor, they discover that some counselors, of course, they were called this domain expert, that they knew different topics really well because they've been there for a long time. But most of these counselors are actually volunteers, and some of them do not know actually different way to address different topics. So in this case, there was this gap between them coming in, receiving a question, do not know how to answer, and then they have to ping someone else with the knowledge, and then they will help together, etc., etc. So those were the challenges they were experiencing. But there was also even deeper challenge, which even the domain expert could not answer. And this is the changing technology and the way kids talk. And the problems that they were having. So, example right now, something called Roblox is in the picture. So if an elderly counselor is there and see the child talk about this Roblox, he asks, "What is this? Where does this thing fit in?" And the child expects different counselors to understand what they're talking about when they talk about TikTok or FB, which is Facebook, and Insta, and all those things. So we wanted to create a tool that will help counselors help the children. So we didn't want to. So if we have the children here, and then we have the counselors here. So I will have so many children trying to reach out for help, and they're all in a queue. And here a counselor will take one of the child, try to answer them, etc., etc. So in this kind of way, we did not want to create an AI that will come and sit here, bringing taking over some of the counselor's job. We actually says, no, we are not going into this kind of way, because we still want the children to have a human to human interaction. But what we could do best is create a machine learning algorithm, which we just, let's call it AI because it sounds fancier, but it's just a machine learning algorithm that will be like a co-player with the counselors. So in this case, the AI or the machine learning algorithm will also be listening to what the child is saying. And with that in process, it will give some clues to the counselor of what is going on. So it will tell you, okay, we think the child is talking about this issue. And the counselor will either affirm that or disaffirm, either accept the advice or not accept an advice. So it's a co-player, not the main player in this whole setup. So this is where I'm going to share how we build the entire stuff, not everything, but the core part, which is the ethic around this, because it involves children, it involves algorithm. So ethics had to stay as the main thing that we start and we end with. So because it's very easy to fall into deep trouble of bias and unethical models, etc., etc. Mostly when you deal with such a sensitive data. So this is a setup, and I'm looking forward for the question afterwards, because that's what will make interesting. And here is how I will show you how we went about building such a system. So, I will start from the first thing that we had to start as main. This was like all the developers who went to start this project, like whenever they come in, we created a guideline to which they will have to pledge their allegiance with. Like they will say, okay, whenever I'm going to submit my code, I will make sure that I will follow this ethical guideline. And whenever the developers write their first code and commit, we know that they have affirmed that they will follow the ethical guidelines to contribute to this project. So what are those ethical guidelines? So I will just go to the tests here, because they are in the test zone here. So we come down here, and then I will just pull some of them out. So I will just make sure that we can preview them. So I will not go into the classical one. So the classical one is that whenever we go through the project, we ask like, how was the data collected? Do we have consent? Do we know if there's a potential bias in the data? And if we know those kind of biases, how are we going to deal with it? So one of those things, to which I will show, in a second, is we discover that the way boys and girls talk about different topics, they use kind of different wording, and they have different emphasis in what they usually want to talk about. But according to one of the ethical criteria, they did not want they wanted the model not to segregate between boys and girls. They wanted whatever the child says, the model should always give the same prediction. So whether you're a boy or you're a girl, the model should give the same prediction. So by just working with data, we discover that, okay, we're gonna potentially having this issue that when boys talk about a topic like sex, they will use this kind of words. And when girls talks about sex, they will use this kind of words. But then how can we teach the model to not look at this as a classification, but treat them equally? And you will see this as we go forward. So, and we go down into how we secure data, how we create the way data will be encrypted, how the data will be deleted and being forgotten, and all these steps that are like they need to be in any data science project. So the part which I wanted to emphasize mostly is when it comes to this fairness part. So we discover that, okay, we discover that most of data scientists' way of building model are usually focused in the wrong things. What I usually say they're focused in the wrong things is that they're usually focusing on the model accuracy, on how well the models are performing, which I think that is really good, and that's how we were fine-tuned when we were trained. Like when you do cargo competition and everything, it's all about generating really awesome models. But we discovered that is actually not the case. It shouldn't start with the accurate model. It should start with the fair model. So so you can, if you have a super accurate model that is not fair, is as useless as a dummy model. So we started with a model that is fair as the first criteria. Then second, the model that perform the best. So sometimes if you have a really good model, but it's not fair, it's usually tossed in a bin. So we have actually a pipeline here. When we deploy a model, it goes through different tests. And actually we can, as I mentioned, something like that. So it goes through a different kind of test, which actually will make sure that if any of the model which we're training is about to be put in production, it fails this counterfactual fairness, which I'll come to explain what they are. If it fails this kind of test, it will automatically be rejected to be deployed into production. So it can be the best model that we have, but it fails fairness tests, it's just tossed in the bin, even no matter how good it is. As you can see here, we are running different tests, like of religion, of gender, testing different parameters, which I will show in a second. Okay, so when we talk about this fairness test, what are we looking for? We are looking for some kind of what we call protected attributes, whether they're there. So these are like religion, sex, gender, sexual preference, etc., etc. Do they affect the score? So we, as the criteria of this child watch, whether you were gay, straight, binary, whatever, you were supposed to get the same prediction, the same assistant, the same service. So whether you are a purely Danish or you are an ethnic from another background, they needed not to see any differences in the scores, right? So this is what you see when we come to the individual fairness. We come to demographic fairness. We come the equality of opportunity. So so all these are really, really awesome things. But then from here, I will rewind back to start taking you. So now I went forward, then I'm rewinding back on how we went through building such models. So in nutshell, so I will just take my here. In a nutshell, we began by just building a language model. When we build a language model, we build a model that could understand how kids talk, like how do they use words, what do these words mean. So in here we had just a language model. Now from a language model, we knew that we could create a topic model, and here we tried different models from LDA to NSL, but we end up with NMF, which is just non-negative matrix factorization, which performed really, really well to our surprise. But then we discover that it was not enough just having an ML model. So if I go here, we have this as a topic model. So just here, so we had a topic model. And this, at the moment, we are just using NMF. We discovered that some of the topic, it didn't catch them because they were a bit not well represented. But we discovered that we had domain experts in this organization that could just spot things in a blink of an eye, that they did not need an AI to answer such a thing that themselves could see. So by looking at this, we discover that, okay, maybe we could have another way of looking at models. So we should have a machine learning model, and then we should have a human learned model. So this is the domain expert model. Together, they create this one, I will call it, then together they create this super, we call it super model. So it's a combination of human knowledge and machine learning knowledge combined together to solve a problem. And I found this really, really good, because as data scientists, we tend to forget that the domain experts actually, in most cases, come first, and then the model comes second. But then when you can combine these two together, then you end up with an amazing model that is actually doing what needs to be done. Okay, so without ado, I will just, we promise a lot of demos, so let's do some quick run out of demos. So basically, I will jump to things that I found important. So the first thing is, we of course could learn some of the language, and this is Danish for those who do not understand, but of course one can understand verb, adverb, punctuation, etc. We had to learn, okay, what part of the data do we want to keep and teach the model? This part, because it's not everything that you want to send into your machine. You want to do like this kind of pre-processing of saying exactly what is it that we're sending in and how do we transform, because as we know, in machine learning, models are simply a representation of your data. So I usually say models are just a mathematical representation of the data that you have. So the best way you make that data, the better the model are. The crappier your data set is, then the crappier the model is. So there is no magic in machine learning. It's simply a representation of the data that you have. So, and here's where you have to deal with biases. You have to deal with everything. You have to know what's going on, because whatever is in your data will be in your model. So here's where the steps of pre-processing data became really, really important. So I will jump to the models. So what we did first, when I talk about, we create a language model that could understand kids. And in order to understand that your model has actually, the machine has learned the children language, we needed a way kind of to visualize the embeddings. And by embeddings, I mean that when you teach a machine a language, you want to teach it how to associate things, right? So like here, we are looking at bulimia, which is like bulimia in English. And we see, okay, so the model has learned the association of this word, like in this sense. And here I will look like a word of unprotected sex, and it doesn't make so much sense when you look things like this. But thankfully, we have tools like TensorFlow that help us to visualize this data into a 3D dimension. So as you can see here, the same words. I think I will take this bulimia, because that's the one we were looking for. So just bulimia. So when I move it here, this area, so I can see, okay, so the model has discovered that a cluster of bulimia includes overeating, include vomiting and losing weight and anorexic. So in this case, I discover, okay, so my language model makes sense. And of course, I can already see different clusters and what they do, etc., etc. this is a confirmation that your data preprocessing has not destroyed the semantic of the children language. And here one could easily say as well, just use already pre-trained models which are out there. But there we say no, we cannot use pre-trained models because those pre-trained models have been trained in newspapers and Wikipedia, and they turn out to be very biased, very racistic, because that's what is in the media and in news. And we do not want to introduce that when dealing with children's data. So we want to understand children from their own perspective, and the way they formulate themselves, the misspelling, the everything that goes with it. So that part is here, and the part where I talked about boys and girls talks about different topic in a different way. So you could actually see when it's about girls, they will more talk about, probably I shouldn't translate these words to English, but you can get some of them which are very similar to English. But we can see the words that are into that direction, of things that girls know and usually talk about when they talk about this kind of topics. But this was okay. But when it comes to suicide, we didn't care whether it was a girl or a boy that talks about suicide, right? So we made sure that we need to take care of this, that no matter how the language formulation is, the scoring should be the same, right? So this is what you see here. Even though boys and girls talk about differently when it comes to suicide, we needed to deal with it. So when we build a model, so I will skip. I will skip to, actually I will move to this one here, where we talked about building a model that combined the two worlds. So I can just open here. So I will go back up here into the supermodel. So you can see when we build a supermodel, we actually created a model that takes the human knowledge, and also it took the machine knowledge, and together it created a combination of models. So you can see I have like a result here where I just passed in these words to see how they are being treated. So you can see the human model just got that this topic. So what I wrote about here is avoid trying to commit suicide and bulimia and losing weight, something like that, because I wanted to see, does it trigger the topic of suicide and eating disorder, right? This is the word for eating disorder. And then, so you could see the human model just pick this one, and then the machine learning model comes and also pick it, depression and suicide, right? And then it picks also suicide here. And then together, as you can see, the end result is a combination of a human model and a machine learning model, creating this cluster to which AI used to help the counselors go forth in that. So this part is only the AI or the machine learning part, but this part is coupled with another part which connects the topic that have been scored with the information that comes with it. So the counselor gets, okay, the topic is about suicide, then make sure to talk to this child about this and this and this. And these are the child's right when they're thinking of this, or when the child is pregnant. These are the questions you need to ask. Where are they in their pregnancy? Okay, have they considered abortion and all this stuff? Is it the right thing? Is it the wrong thing? Etc. Etc. But at the same time, they are not supposed to take any side in this. They are there to just help the child uncover what they are, their thoughts are, and help them in their best way possible. So these are the part of the machine learning part, and then let's end up with the AI part where you saw the test running. What makes this really, really good is that we can open up these tests not just for developers, but also for the outside world to try to check if our models are biased. And how do we do that? So we open an endpoint to which different users can just drop in different conversation, pretending they're kids with different religion, with different age and gender and sexuality, and see that the models are performing what they're supposed to be performing. So some of the tests you've seen here, they come from an example right here. So when we talk about this counterfactual fairness, you can see the idea behind this is that one input the same data. So you could see this part here is exactly the same, but you only change like age difference. So here you want the model to predict the same no matter what age a child gives. So here it's the same. You can see the only thing that changed is I'm a Muslim, I'm a Christian, I'm a Jew. So it has to predict the same in all these circumstances, etc., etc. So these are the kind of tests that have been run, and the model check that we do pass the individual fairness, the demographic priority test, etc., etc. And as you could see right here, all the tests are passing, and that means that this model can be pushed into production. Well, so that was an overall point I wanted to send home, and now it's open up for all the questions.
Thank you so much, Prayson, for such an incredible presentation. Really interesting. And as someone who doesn't come necessarily from a technical background, I really managed to understand a lot of that. So thank you for the clear explanation as well. And like Prayson said, we're going to open up for questions now. So please feel free to interact, to share your questions. We want to hear from you. But Prayson, something that I would like to ask you is, particularly on this project, what is at stake here? So why do we really need to focus on ethics?
Yeah, so that is a brilliant question, because more and more, like we discover that the people who are making the rules, like GDPR and the new laws of AI that just came out, they are making life harder. Technology is becoming, building new technology is becoming harder, and this is because of fear of what we are they say that we're building algorithm that even ourselves cannot understand, which it's sad in most cases, but it's not true, because now we show that you can build any model, and even though you cannot explain it, you can run this kind of counterfactual test to know exactly what's going on. So what is at stake is that more rules are going to come and bring our innovation backwards, and that means we cannot help people become more human too. And this is only in Europe, because in China there are no limits. They're just going to skyrocket in their technology, and we just going to be back in. The more rules comes, the more we're going to be pushed backward. But for me, I don't really care that. What I care most is that we're not going to be able to help because of bad name that we have. So, and another biggest challenge that we're experiencing is that we need to focus on ethic, because AI, when it done wrong, can introduce a lot of harm. So harm in a way that some people will be segregated, not getting the right prediction, and therefore marginalized. And we don't want to introduce the human bias that is already within us into the machine, because we want to bring a better future. At least that's my hope, that everyone is here to try to bring a better future. That means then building model that reflect the future that we want is so much better than letting it just reflect in the a bit chaotic world that we are right now in, right? So that's what is at stake, both innovation wise, but also marginalizing and not letting AI do horrible things while we can stop it. So that is, I think that's what is at stake here. We want to correct those wrongs.
Yeah, thank you for sharing. And with that in mind, who actually gets to decide or judge that the model is or is not ethical?
That's a question that make me lose sleep, right? Because one will say, so who get to decide what is ethical and what is not? So in the way we have tried to answer this is by saying, well, everyone gets to decide, in a sense that we create a machine learning model, and then we expose part of it, which is the testing part of it, the counterfactual testing part of it, to everyone out there to decide whether this is right or wrong, right? And by doing this, we are not just saying that, okay, our models are right, but we are doing this in a way that to allow people to test and correct us where we're wrong, right? So because if someone find a glitch, then it's really nice to say, oh, we discovered this glitch here. And I go like, oh no, I did not know that. Let me go fix it as fast as possible. Then I fix it and then I come back, can you try the next model that we have put in production? Is it living into towards the expectation we think it should do? And then in this case, it's the entire society that gets to decide what is right and what's wrong.
Preston, thank you so much for sharing your insights on this and incredibly important work that you're doing. This is a topic that's really close to my heart. If anyone has any questions, can they reach out to you through LinkedIn or what means of contact?
Yes, so LinkedIn, GitHub, wherever, you can just reach out. But mostly I'm very active in my LinkedIn.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Preston. So I think we're going to try and bring Kat back to the stage now after what was a few technical difficulties. Like we say, it wouldn't be a virtual event without them. Kat, I can see you. This is good. Fingers crossed. The stage is yours.
Okay, well, thank you again, Ellie, for having me. I'm just going to start over with the story, if that's okay. So a CAT scan, the idea is like a CT scan. We're using computer vision and augmented reality to show people instantly what's inside their foods and products and how that relates to many different health conditions. And the name CAT scan is actually a throwback to how this whole thing started, which takes place. I'm sitting in my doctor's office. It was just a routine exam, but she comes back and says, we found a suspicious lump and you could have cancer. And I was shocked because cancer does not run in my family. I live an extremely healthy lifestyle. And so I asked her, how could this have happened? And she said, well, that's a misnomer. There's a lot of different ways that you can get cancer. And some of that has to do with the toxins that you're exposed to every day, which include, toxins that we're exposed to through foods and other products. And I explained to her, I said, no, you don't understand. I'm very vigilant. I don't buy anything that has artificial ingredients or parabens. And she stopped me and she said, just because something says that it's all
Oh no, Kat. I think we've lost you, Kat. It was going so well.
I know. I'm not sure what's going on. Should we give it one more try and then yeah, maybe I just tape it and send it to you.
No, we can hear you now.
This is just too distracting. I'm going to try to hardwire in and then you can bring me back. These are good teasers.
Yeah, exactly. We're getting some sneak peeks, Kat. It'll be worth the wait. Right, so we will let Kat try again. Technical difficulties to be expected. But what I'd like to do now is introduce Christian Norlin, who is the head of design and technology at Ericsson UN. And this is Ericsson's global community of designers, developers, and entrepreneurs that really create innovations that solve real problems as well as addressing global challenges. So his colleagues conduct design-driven investigations at the intersection of culture, business, and technology with the assessment to really understand societal changes and its relation to current and future technologies and business. Christian, welcome.
Thank you. Hello, can you hear me?
I can hear you. Yes, I can.
Excellent. Good. All right. So thank you so much. I have a teenager in that room, so if you hear shouting, it's not me, it's him. All right. So let's share my screen. Obviously, since I work in high tech, I need PowerPoint. So here we go. All right. Feels like there you go. Should be fine. You should see. Yeah. And there we go. Hopefully you'll see my presentation, right? I can't see you, so I assume...
We can see you, Christian.
All right, brilliant. Excellent, thank you. All right, so, Ericsson, for those of you who don't know who we are, We make mobile communication infrastructure, basically mobile networks. That's our biggest business that we at the moment. And 3G, 4G, and 5G. Those are the things that we build and operate together with mobile operators across the world. As you can imagine, Ericsson, high tech being, at the center of digitalization, we spend a lot of time thinking about technology. We think about new types of technologies, and we basically just research and develop all the time. But we also take another perspective on this, something that teams like mine and others are working with, which is to take the outside-in perspective on where technology should be moving or could be moving. And when I say outside, an outside perspective, I mean society, business, and technology that is not like telecom technology. So basically what we do, our approach is to investigate continuously what is happening in society, for instance. What trends can we see when it comes to business and other types of technologies? And what we do is we try to look at these trends and these developments with a 3 to 7 year sort of time horizon. And what we're looking for is that green part in the middle where things intersect, where we can see that, that could be quite interesting. That's where we sort of find clues to what we can do as an industry and as a company. Now, as you can imagine, there's so much information about what the future might be and how to get there and so forth, trends, forecasts, foresightings, etc. So where do you start? Well, here's the thing, and this is kind of like the main sort of like message that I would like to for you guys to take with you from my presentation. You can start here. And the reason for this, I will tell you soon. So a number of years ago, my team and we sat down and we said, right, how do we navigate into the future? Do we have a map? Is there a star map that we can follow somehow? And we started to think about relevance, like a key thing if you make stuff like technology, solutions, products, whatever, is that you solve someone's problem or you address someone's opportunities. Now, the Sustainable Development Goals are interesting in the sense that there are goals, there are areas, and there are domains that the world has agreed that it needs help with. So this is basically a blueprint to how to become relevant in the future. That is the working hypothesis within our team. Of course, to address these is not easy, and it's not something that my team can do on its own. So it requires a lot of collaboration with other teams within Ericsson, but also outside in the world, in particular with the ones that are perhaps mostly affected by these challenges. So that's what we do. And this is what I'm trying to say, is that by doing this, not only do we solve real world problems, not only do we address real world opportunities, but we also become relevant in terms of what technologies we can develop and what solutions that we can create and make and present to the world. So in theory, it sounds easy. So what I'll try to do now is to explain to you guys through a project how this works in reality and some of the learnings, and hopefully you can be inspired, or you can have questions around it. But this is how we think about it. Some of the things that we come up with in our investigations that sort of originate from the Sustainable Development Goals will include technology that might not even be here today. And that means that what we create is not only solutions for something today, but also guidelines or input into what sort of business and technology strategies we should work with in order to reach when we move into the future. So we can address things today, but we can also sort of like point out the directions for both business and strategy in the future. Now, I mentioned a couple of times collaboration and partners. In 2015, my team hooked up with UN-Habitat, with whom Ericsson already had an ongoing partnership at the time. What we did was that, following this idea that we should investigate the future with the help of the Sustainable Development Goals, we called up some friends at UN-Habitat and said, right, can we look at cities? Because urbanization is a big trend today in today's world, and it brings with it, I would say, opportunities, but quite frankly, quite a lot of challenges. And for those of you who don't know what it is the fact that a lot of people are moving into cities, leaving rural areas, moving into cities in search for a better life, more or less, you can say. Just to give you an idea of what we're talking about here, is that by 2050, 66% of the world's population will live in cities, which is a really, really high number. It's the highest number in history. 60% of the needed urban area in 2030 remains to be built. This means that there will be a tremendous pace required to address this shift in people's habitat. The development of urban space is also estimated to reach about $3.7 trillion in infrastructure investments annually until 2050. I mean, I'm not saying this because of the money part. I say this because it sort of illustrates how urgent and how willing the world is to address this issue. So, but all in all, this is an area that really needs some investigation. And what if ICT and communication technologies could actually help out here? Now, if you look at goal number 11 a bit closer, it's apparent that one of the major challenges has to do with the need for a much more inclusive and participatory approach to planning and development of urban space. Meaning, of course, that how do we get more people, stakeholders, organizations, whatever, into the process of building new urban space? This is not something that I say. There's a vast number of leading authorities that point at this very fact. I mean, I can point you to the new urban agenda from the Habitat 3 conference, which explicitly even points at digital platforms and tools for making and how important they will be in order to make urbanization more sustainable. To us, when we look at this, and I'm sort of shortcutting the analysis a bit here, of course, these are indicators that this is where ICT and telecommunication potentially could do something good. Now, but what do we mean with inclusive or participatory urban development? Well, if you look at urban development today, there's a lot of information that is being shared digitally, but it's like the lowest hanging fruit when it comes to digitalization and information spreading. It basically looks like this. There could be 3D illustrations, renderings. It could be two-dimensional sort of principal blueprints. It could be simulations, etc. It looks like this. It's usually published on public websites for the various stakeholders to sort of engage with in various kinds of ways. Now, the problem is that most people are not trained city planners or architects. So, for instance, this woman who I met in a public office in Stockholm, looking at the very same material that I just shared in printed form, because she's not using a computer. For most people, this information gives them only parts of the context of the information, because most people are not trained to interpret what is being presented to them. It's kind of difficult for this woman to engage in an informed conversation and argument with an architect or a city planner, for instance. And this is something that is not a new thing. It's actually being addressed in various ways over the years and over time. So this is another way, a Swedish fika, where you bring cinnamon buns and coffee, and you have people looking at the two-dimensional map with three-dimensional buildings, new buildings, of course, in order for planners and architects to understand more about how these people will react to the proposed development of their neighborhood. Unfortunately, this is not a very working process today. And funny enough, this is what we saw and could connect to some of the technology trends that we had been investigating in 2015 already. I'll give you mixed reality, and hopefully you see something. I know that the video might be a bit slow, might have a bit of slow frame rate, but mixed reality is one of the technologies that my team and other teams at Ericsson had been investigating over time, for a while in 2015. Basically, if you think about it, mobile networks today, they transmit pictures, they transfer text, video, and sound. What could potentially new information types be in the future? We ask ourselves, and mixed reality was one of those things that popped up, and that had popped up on our radar. Basically, blending virtual objects with real world with the real world. When you look at the real world through a smartphone or a pair of goggles that could potentially render the virtual objects within reality. Now, this is something that we had been investigating in various contexts before. For instance, in 2013, when we started to remotely control machines, for instance, where you could have a mixed reality view of the machine's sort of environment when remotely controlling it from a distance. And this is what we started to think about. If you can do that, what if you could take the two-dimensional drawings? What if you can take the abstract illustrations of a new urban space that people are looking at basically on a table in a conference room? What if you could take those models out in the real world and have people look at them in real time where they live, together with architects, together with city planners? So you can have a much more informed conversation, a much richer form of dialogue between the different stakeholders, not having to interpret two-dimensional drawings and sort of like architecture lingo, but actually looking at real buildings, such as this example, standing just where you live, hold up a pair of goggles and see the new buildings that are going to be brought up or are proposed to be brought up here, perhaps even with traffic simulations, sound, noise. You can see shadows over time. For instance, like you can see how the sun will travel over the day, and you can actually get a much more rich and informed experience of what a new development would mean to you, where you live or work or whatever it might be. So that was the hypothesis. So what we then did was that we made a small prototype of this idea, basically, and then we took that prototype together with UN-Habitat, Johannesburg Development Agency, and Wits University in Johannesburg, and we went to Johannesburg, where we 3D scanned a square that was going to be redesigned and rebuilt, and we had architecture students redesign that square in Minecraft. So we 3D scanned the square, made a Minecraft version of the square, had the students 3D model their proposals in Minecraft, which is basically another UN-Habitat project with another partner called Block by Block. And that's usually what they do. And then they have conversations around the 3D models on PCs. What we did was that we took the students out into the square where we put the 3D models, the Minecraft models, their Minecraft designs, and we had them experience these models in real time. They could actually walk around their own creations in that square and see them as if they were there. They could see the shadows and the size of things. And this is a video of what it looked like through that viewport, that video, that smartphone that they saw. And hopefully, even though it's not very smooth, you can see that there are Minecraft objects mixed with the real world. So basically, students could construct this kind of like massive structure and walk up to it and say, oh, it turned out rather big, or maybe it's getting too dark in that corner. That's something that it can actually walk around and experience. The reactions, and I'm not sure if you're going to hear this, but the reactions from the participants, from various stakeholders, were quite amazing, to be honest. So I'm not sure if you could hear all of it or if you could even hear the reactions. I'll post some pictures, some links to some blog posts where this video and other videos are present, so you can actually hear them for yourself. But what we found was that even though this was a very rudimentary prototype system, the very fact that we could present a plan for an urban space in this way made the conversation between different stakeholders, the architects, the city planners, the people living there, so rich, and it made the conversation so meaningful. It sort of broke down the barriers of knowledge and putting words to complex matters so well. It was astounding. It wasn't perfect, and so we learned a lot from it. But at the end of the day, it was a tremendously good indicator of where we might be heading in the future. This is my final slide. The end result of this particular field study and the field trial meant that UN-Habitat formulated a new 10-year strategy in which digital technologies or technology frontiers became one of the biggest components, mainly built on the experiences from this and some other projects with digital technologies. And for Ericsson, of course, we could confirm, but we also learned a lot about what kind of new types of use cases, what kind of new types of communication and information do we need to cater for in our future networks. So in that sense, it's a very good example of a public-private partnership that worked really, really well and provided really, really, really good input to us. I'll send these links together with my contact details in some sort of chat window soon as I'm done here. And I'm more than willing to take questions, feedback, criticism, whatever you might throw at me. So yeah.
Thank you, Christian, for a fantastic presentation. And as Christian mentions, again, we're very interactive, so we want to hear your questions. Anything you may have, please let us know in the chat box. And I just think it's incredible what you achieved there. I mean, I'm soon to be renovating my home. I think I need to take advantage of that technology, Christian, so I can see the vision in real life.
Oh, yeah, well, we'll do our best. I'm just going to stop sharing, I think. So there you go.
So I have one question, actually, Christian. Considering that you're working with the tech industry, what are your biggest challenges for thinking about a sustainable future?
I think one of the hardest things when you work in high tech is that there's a strong will, not only within Ericsson but also within the high tech industry. I'm not sure if you've seen the Netflix the Netflix series. Silicon Valley, where technology for good is kind of like making the world a better place. I mean, the will is there, but at the same time, it's kind of difficult sometimes to sort of push, to change the starting point or change the reasoning for what sort of new technologies, how you influence new technology. It's kind of like the technology determinism. Is kind of a strong force within my industry. So when you bring these kind of things up, these approaches up, you have to have stamina, and you have to be, and part of the reason why we make things is actually because seeing is believing. If I just tell you about this, it's usually difficult for people. I mean, a lot of people working with tech feels that they're being constrained, but by doing this, we've found that maybe people are getting more inspired and actually see that, but this is actually not constraining us at all. So yeah, I think that is the biggest challenge. I think we have a question.
Yes, we do, from Harshit. So Harshit says, is it a type of scanner or an X-ray kind of thing working as a real-time architect field?
All right, so a bit technical here now. So basically, why this is interesting for the telecom world is this. If you have one of these devices, this is a smartphone, when you look through that camera and those sensors over there, they see 5, 10, 15 meters in front of them, basically. So they're quite nearsighted. What they do when we talk about augmented reality and mixed reality is they create they create a virtual sort of a three-dimensional point cloud. They create a virtual representation of reality that this device can navigate within. So it understands the boundaries of the real world. In that, they can position things. Now, the problem is, of course, that requires a lot of processing power and a lot of battery, because it's sort of like very consuming. Now, if you want to do real world scale mixed reality, like I showed you here, like with buildings maybe 200-300 meters away from you, then you need to rely on external data, like massive point clouds, maybe like 3D point clouds that you pre-scan with a car, for instance, with a LiDAR on a car. Now, what's happening then is that you merge, and this is the beauty of things. What you create is almost like, these point clouds can be really high definition, meaning that if you position things in them, you can basically cut out and create, you can obfuscate real objects and let other objects. So you basically create this illusion of space. So it's not X-ray, but you create the illusion of X-raying by masking out buildings that might be in front of the thing that you want to place inside the real world, the virtual objects. So, and this has to be done runtime. So when you move like this, the mask has to change. So in that sense, we create this kind of like imaginary sort of like 3D X-ray system in a way. It's insanely complicated, and I think the engineers that I work with will probably, laugh at me trying to explain it like this. But I hope it's sort of like it comes across somewhat understandable.
That was really interesting, and thank you for a great question as well, Harshit. So
yeah, brilliant.
Yeah, also, the Sustainable Development Goals are quite many and rather broad. So do you have any tips on how and where to start exploring them as well?
I think, I think the best way to do this is to engage with external partners. I think that is the thing. In my team, I have a golden rule that people should always interact with the outside world. They don't really need to ask for permission. I expect them to. I don't call it something with a trademark. It's like, if you don't have anything to do, attend sessions like this. Go to engage with. We work at Ericsson. We have loads of partners. Investigate those. Always keep on pushing and try to understand what's going on and how we potentially could make a difference. So if you do that, then all of a sudden you sort of fill up your sort of experience list, your bucket of influences, which means that sometimes, right now Ericsson works with UNESCO. Of course, that's a clear connection to one of the Sustainable Development Goals. But then, of course, you have to dig down into that goal because it's kind of broad. But then you can do small missions. You can do like 6-8 week projects, investigating them, poking them, try to dig up is this fertile ground or soil? Can we sort of plant something here? Those are the things that we need to do, because at the end of the day, it's not going to present itself like just automatically. You have to poke and investigate them a bit together with partners. I think that would, for us working within the high-tech industry or within the tech industry, we always need to understand that we live in a context, and that's through that context we will become relevant over time. So I think that's find a partner, start poking. That's what I would say.
Yeah, that's a really great tip. So collaboration, I'm getting that vibe. That's key on this, and trial and error.
And never ever think that just because someone is not as high-tech as you are. Never think that you can't sort of push your own boundaries, because that is the most common misconception, I think, sometimes, is that only we within the tech industry can push the boundaries. Well, I can tell you, boundaries, you can discover boundaries that you couldn't see unless you talk to someone who's not within your field, but someone that has a real problem, that has, where you can see that what you create makes a real difference. That creates new boundaries that you can push against. And it's so difficult to do in isolation within your tech bubble. So yeah, the world is yours. Go out there.
I really love that. Yeah, I'm a big believer of this quote, and it says, "Be afraid, but do it anyway." So I think that really resonates with what you're saying as well, is just go for it, and you can make a change, you can make an impact.
Yeah, definitely.
Thank you so much for a great presentation and for your insights
you.
as well to some of the questions. It's been great speaking with you. So people can reach out to you through LinkedIn and other social platforms.
Yeah, sure. I sent something in the private chat of this little tool that we're using. So hopefully someone can push it, or maybe I can push it myself, basically. Right, let's see. I think I can, no, I can't comment myself. That's a shame.
We'll figure it out for you.
Yeah, I could have given myself a good review there, but no, apparently not. All right.
Thank you so much, Christian. It's been a pleasure.
Yes, thank you.
So I'd like to bring up our third speaker, who is Smriti. So Smriti is on a mission to battle the climate crisis and work towards the 7 Sustainable Development Goals using her knowledge and experience in artificial intelligence. But Smriti also thinks that if AI is used cautiously, it can really definitely reduce the stigma around mental health. She has a passion for educating people around mental health disorders, to create mental awareness, and is a facilitator for Sweden for the Global Mental Wellness Society. Smriti, welcome.
Hi, Ellie. Can you hear me fine?
Yes, we can hear you.
Awesome. So first of all, I love the shirt.
Thank you. I made it myself.
Oh, that's so cool. I want one of those too. Hopefully when we meet in UK.
Definitely. You'll get one.
So yeah, thank you so much, Sven and Ellie, for inviting me to the talk. First of all, to the event, first of all, and I'm so happy to be a part of this Tech for Good event with awesome people like Prayson, Kat, and Christian. I loved Prayson's talk. Like, model fairness is definitely so much more important than mere accuracy, with no black box. Like, interpretability, and when people are able to understand what they're doing and what they're seeing, it's more important than, like a 99% or 100% accurate model. And AI ethics. And I couldn't have said it better than him. So it was awesome. And Kat, I'm so inspired by the teasers, and I'm looking forward for the whole story.
We'll get
Yeah. And I don't know much about mixed reality, but I learned so much from Christian's talk. And also, I love his humor, which is awesome. And yeah. And I also want to say the work that Ericsson is doing, because I myself, I'm usually based in Stockholm, unless stuck in pandemic right now, in India. So it's so awesome, like the impact Ericsson has. And also recently, it all comes together, right? They renamed Ericsson Globe as Avicii Arena, which is such an important and amazing step for suicide prevention for young, and teen and young adults, which is so cool and important. So it's awesome. So mental health, that's what I'm here for. So I actually made a presentation, but I don't want to go with it, and I just want to go like impromptu, because something happened today and I just want to talk. So if I exceed the time, let me know. So when it comes to mental health, like, I know a lot of us can relate to it, and it hits you all of a sudden. It's like the middle of the day, you're surrounded by friends and sun is out, everything's awesome, but it just doesn't feel right. And it's about the feeling, a very uncomfortable feeling in your mind, something that you feel in your stomach. I do. You want to leave and go somewhere which is quiet, and like, you feel consumed by your own thoughts, and it's dark, it's horrid, you're afraid, it's wrecking you inside and out. And that's what a person is feeling. And despite all of this, there's a stigma that makes people not speak up when they are going through this, which I think does not make sense, but it's there, and it's super unfortunate. 792 million was the number that came up on the Google search when I checked the last time. So 792 million people all across the world, they suffer from any type of mental health disorder or substance abuse, and 3/4 of them, they suffer in silence. And I don't think it can get any worse. Like, we talk about a pandemic, and imagine the scale of the mental health disorders. It's like so much worse than pandemic. We lose people who are like 20, 30 years old. I don't know. Like, we lose so many people, we lose so much potential. It's just, it's sad. And I think AI in a way can contribute towards destigmatizing it, and like also creating some better tools for detection of mental health and defining the DSM-5 better. So why I think mental health is related to AI is because AI is like closely linked to human psychology. The basis for research in the field of AI, it stems from the network of neurons in the human brain. These neurons, they make a connection based on your perception and outside stimuli, and transmit this information through electric and chemical signals, which allows adaptive learning to take place. So AI, if used correctly and cautiously, is very promising in both understanding the complex mental health diseases or disorders. I don't like to call them diseases, but some people do. Let's go with disorders. And even transforming mental health care. I've also worked with, so I studied computational neuroscience at KTH for 1.5 years. And I've also worked with physical health care using AI, which is also like transforming and expanding so well. But when it comes to mental health, I think it's do a lot more than it's doing right now because of the research, like the advanced research that's taking place at this time. So AI can be very beneficial in predicting and classifying mental health disorders. It can also help subgroup them based on mood disorders, anxiety disorders, or if they are co-occurring, which is most probably the case. So, for example, talk about me. For me, I have depression, which is an anxiety disorder, and it co-occurs with a mood disorder, which is about with a personality disorder, which is a borderline personality disorder. So the thing with mental health disorders is that they often coexist, and once we can understand it at a more grassroots level, we can distinguish them better. It can lead to like early analysis or early diagnosis. AI can potentially achieve high accuracy. As we keep developing more robust and advanced AI techniques, it will also be possible to help mental health practitioners to redefine mental health illnesses in the first place more objectively than it's currently there in DSM-5, as I always say. Like, DSM-5 keeps like, to those who don't know, DSM-5, it keeps revised, like they keep revising it, and I think the last revision was in 2013, and they're like, it needs some help. So identifying these illnesses at an earlier or a much prodromal stage, when interventions may be more effective, and like these treatments could also be personalized based on individuals' unique characteristics, because the way a person reacts to medication, the person reacts to the same disorder is like as different as the earth and sky. I don't know, it's like extremely different. So it could lead to personalization, which is again super cool. And obviously this needs to be done with a lot of caution, and a lot of research is required for the same. And I also believe that the amalgamation of AI into identifying mental health illnesses or disorders could also reduce the stigma surrounding it, as it's still an issue that's frowned upon in a lot of parts of the world, and especially in developing economies. So when we analyze it using more advanced neuroscience tools and using AI, it might be more sought after and as a more accepted thing that exists in the society, as opposed to something that's frowned upon. And once we use more advanced neuroscience tools, it'll be closer to a physical diagnosis. So in my experience, one of the biggest opportunities for AI in the field of neuroscience is doing more biologically plausible research and creating visual perception for unique features of human cognition. So this will lead us to understand and to know much more about human brain, which is still a mystery to a huge extent. And this will also eventually help us understand mental health illnesses, the triggers to mental health illnesses, and the best way to recover from them. So biologically inspired artificial neural networks, or ANN, and computational neuroscience, the approaches, they attempt to elucidate brain networks and gradually are getting closer to experimental neuroscience. However, this would definitely require a lot more research and so many more conversations between neuroscientists and AI researchers. And it's very fascinating how both can learn from each other and develop something that could be transforming. Like we see so much work going around with Neuralink that Elon Musk and his team is working on, using AI, computational neuroscience, and a lot of research around it. Also, how can AI benefit from neuroscience is something that I get asked often. So in my opinion, neuroscience is always, it's not my opinion, it's the truth. So neuroscience has always been a key inspiration behind the history and development of artificial intelligence. And of course, there's so much more that we can learn. So neuroscience is always, um, it's been an inspiration to make the network more intelligent and more human-like. So as AI networks are often inspired by the structure of the human brain, so are the neurons in the neural networks. The neural networks in AI have very similar characteristics when compared to the biological neurons in the human brain. For example, we keep getting better at a task that we perform in real life. So practice makes you, I wouldn't say perfect, but better. In a similar way, we train AI on a lot of data, and artificial neural network has X number of connections, and each connection on the neural network is associated with a weight. The weight decides how much influence you have on the input will have on the output. Biases, which are often constant, and an additional input in the next layer, which is, yeah, so there's like a lot of things going on. So that's like the entire training process, and we tune the weight, we tune the rewards, we tune the influence. So it's so much similar to how we work or function in real life. However, there's a lot to learn about the plasticity and the malleability of the human brain and try and implement that into the AI networks. It is ongoing research to make AI more human-like and more versatile. For example, as a human, I can walk with my eyes closed, although I might like hit something, but yeah, I can walk. But for the AI model to do the same task in a new environment, which would be walking with eyes closed, is probably not going to work as good as we can do. Or I can, like, if I know how to play a piano, I can play a piano in the dark, but my AI model would not be able to do so. So even a slight change of environment and your model goes like so yeah, a lot of research is going on to fix that as well, so that it gets closer to human thinking, human cognition, and human intelligence. Also, I read a book called The Psychopath Inside, by James Fallon. It's not as creepy as it sounds. It's an awesome book. So where he explains the brain in terms of a 3x3 Rubik cube. Also, it's like so impossibly difficult to understand and visualize how a human brain could be without prior knowledge. So this is where AI jumps in, according to me, and can be employed in X number of ways. So using AI, we can produce new tools or applications to come up with connections or general theoretical principles. This will help us understand the complex machine that our brain is. Also, on a more logical level, AI can help us visualize the different patterns in a human brain and try to find the underlying reason in the difference in patterns, as well as analyze the effects. For example, certain types of overlapping in the brain cause people to lose memory for a short duration of time, which was my study when I was researching at KTH, Stockholm. So this can be visualized using deep recurrent neural networks and sequence learning. So we can also visualize these things using AI-driven tools, which what part of the brain is getting affected and to what extent, which will help us to understand more about, to understand the mental health disorders, which often co-occur, and like disorders like depression, PTSD, OCD, schizophrenia, etc. They could be analyzed uh, using the analysis of the part of the brain that it originates from. Like if we analyze amygdala, which is often the place where anxiety takes place. So the fight or flight response, the fear. So that's where, like, if we analyze amygdala and the sequences there, we can understand a lot more about the anxiety disorders. And if we do hippocampus, which is okay, so everyone's heard mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell. So hippocampus is like the mitochondria of the brain, and hippocampus is what connects like all the different parts of the human brain, and it's like the biggest section in the human brain. So once you understand hippocampus, you understand the sequence of how memory is formed and that processes. So AI can has a lot to do there. So now I would like to discuss some use cases, maybe So if there is one chief benefit of using AI in clinical care or mental health care, it's the technology's ability to obtain insights from massive amounts of data. So we had the genetic revolution, where we had all the genetic data, and it unlocked the key to understanding mental health. We also had neuroimaging, which helps to understand how brain works, as well as smartphone and sensor data does. So intuitively, we know that these tools contain important information that we could use to personalize care for patients, but it's been very hard to unlock the data for clinical insights on a routine basis. So AI systems could help providers to go through these data resources and collect clinically actionable targets that will improve patient care. Also, by doing that, we may be able to offer more personalized and preventive care, and hopefully, we can approach these mental illnesses in a more targeted way. Another advantage of AI driven tools is increased access. So, chatbots can interact with individuals in real time. They're available 24/7 at no cost, and they reduce the stigma in terms of accessing treatment. So, whether these tools are used as a standalone treatment agents or as an adjunct to more traditional counseling, chatbots provide added therapeutic content. So advanced analytics technologies, they also have huge potential to remove access challenges for marginalized groups, which is, I think, very important. So AI can increase equity and access to mental health services, especially for the LGBTQ youth community who exist at this intersection of identities, because we know that the LGBTQ youth already faces injustices and discrimination in their everyday lives, and this is only compounded when you layer on race, ethnicity, socioeconomic status, gender identity, and so on. So when I think how AI can evolve to support people who represent a variety of different experiences, I think about eliminating barriers to convenience or access or privacy. So making services available 24/7 on demand on different platforms, and also giving people the space for sensitive conversations, even more for ones that may not be able to speak about it loudly, is when it will actually create some waves. So while the one use of AI comes with like several potential benefits, it will be critical to maintain care approaches that are focused on the patient-provider relationship. So this is one of the most feasible applications of AI in mental health care field. The role of AI in healthcare that I'm most excited about and that has the most potential to make an impact right now, I think, is supporting human therapists. Right now, therapists are mostly on their own room with clients, and even afterwards. And after you're trained to be a therapist, you don't get supervised much anywhere in most places. You're usually using your own judgment and training to try and make sure that you're doing the right things. So, what if we can use AI tools right now, which can help them listen into these sessions and give the therapist some insights, which would be, like, I think pretty useful, and we can always use a second opinion. So even things like how much you talked and the type of basic interventions you used, which is also very related to what Prayson spoke about in an awesome way. Also, another thing that Prayson spoke about, and I think it's extremely important in mental health, is that we must ensure that AI helps and not harms. So, which is also the topic for today's event, which is tech for good, or AI for good, or using anything for good. So, for all the good AI can do, there are a number of significant barriers to using technology in mental health care. With smartphones, apps, and chatbots, patient engagement is a key factor in determining the success of technology. One challenge for mobile health applications is making sure that people come back and interact on a regular basis. So typically, the more the individual uses it, the you can gather like more information, and hence you get like more benefit out of it. Anything that you can do to boost engagement and make sure that it helps with the outcomes in terms of accuracy and effectiveness. So additionally, developers and researchers, they need to make sure that they equip these tools with appropriate protections for high risk patients. We need some safety features built into it, like language detection for and rules for risk management. It does state explicitly, like, that it's like these things cannot be used as a suicide prevention tool standalone, but it can always support that. So the data used to train AI models is a crucial aspect for the clinical utility, and the data quality can be particularly challenging when it comes to mental health care. Which I've seen, like, I was working on a project to detect anxiety using AI, and there I came across like how we basically have like very less reliable data around it. So if we want the patient to fill out a questionnaire, it's often biased. People undermine their problems, or they overmine it. So it's usually not as accurate as you would want it to be. So we need authentic data. We need the data that we can rely on. So that's important, and AI is only as good as the data that it's trained on and the people that are using it. So we have to like consider these things and understand the importance of it. So in terms of data it's trained on, we have to wonder what is the gold standard, like, or if there is any existing right now, which I'm not sure of. So it's especially hard to have a gold standard in mental health care, because we know that the current clinical definitions we use are not ideal. We have to take a very careful approach to how we are training these algorithms, and it's not going to be as simple as scoring people's symptoms. Partnerships between industry and academia to develop AI systems will effectively address the complexity of mental health illnesses. That's also so important. And I'm so glad that companies like Ericsson, they are, and so many more companies, they are like right now, um, like contributing towards it, like encouraging their employees to look after their mental health and creating awareness, and my voice is like dying slowly. So yeah, so it's extremely important, and I know so many people who are doing like industrial PhD, industrial research in similar topics, which is extremely important. Also, if we are just solving very easy problems, it doesn't advanced care. So if we have an algorithm that can tell whether someone has schizophrenia or not, it's useful. But it's not really going to advance the field. It's a very small improvement. We need to make sure that we have diverse samples that we train these models on. Because if we are only taking one region, one clinic, or one population, these algorithms are going to have very limited utility. These tools have to be built on from the ground up with a very diverse approach. We have to work with patients as well as input from therapists, psychologists, psychiatrists, data scientists, and regulators. Also, I can't stress enough about the like significance of collaborative development here. So where AI and mental health will meet in the future, right? While the future application of AI in any area of healthcare is still kind of unclear, this reality may be especially true in the mental health space. So, the use of AI in therapy is dependent on several factors, and even if the industry is able to overcome some of the major challenges, the technology isn't likely to appear in front-facing mental health healthcare delivery. The future of AI in this field, AI may be helping us in research, sorting through data to find new patterns that may help us understand how mental health disorders develop in the first place and how can they spread, how can we prevent them. In order for AI to take a more central role, investigators will need to refine research and analysis in this area. We know that people are interested in chatbots. That's for sure. I came across research that was done by Northwestern University in US, and they created this chatbot called Tess. And surprisingly enough, people were a lot more open in talking to the virtual chatbot about their mental health problems that they were going through as compared to a real person. So people are extremely interested in chatbots, and we know that the patients are willing to try them. But in 2021, we really want to be answering questions like how well does it work, right? Or can we conduct higher quality studies? We've seen interest, yes, but we have to contribute towards a development that's more that acts more like a catalyst and something that like does something that contributes in making people more comfortable about what they're feeling. And we have to care about our communities, like our LGBTQIA plus community. We have Pride Month going on, and I don't know if I can, like, it's kind of like not the same topic, but I often wonder that, like, companies change their logo for a month, but what good is it going to do if we, like, don't really promote it, like, don't really hire them, don't invest in them, don't encourage them? And I'm extremely happy. I don't know about how it's going on in other parts of the world, to be honest, but in Stockholm, the companies like Telia, Ericsson, IKEA, they are so supportive. And like one of the most, I think Stockholm is one of the most, you know, um, involving, like including, like inclusion and diversity is like practiced a lot there. And Ellie, you would remember when we were talking, so both of us collaborated on the International Women's Day Summit. And you remember what Anise said about inclusion and belonging, inclusion and diversity. And that's something that I'll never forget. Um, so she said that inclusion is having people on the team. Diversity is having people on the team, like a football team, and inclusion is actually passing the ball to them. So that's so correct, and it's so relevant to mental health also. Like, people who don't feel included, their mental health is supposed to be, like, obviously going to be worse, and they often feel that they're not included. They often feel that they can't speak up. They feel the stigma around them even more. So, and I know how, like, big an advocate you are of inclusion and diversity, and I think it's so related to mental health. and the stigma that's around right now, unfortunately.
Definitely. Thank you so much, Smriti, for sharing your insights on such an incredibly important topic. And I think especially now, what with COVID in the pandemic, mental health is a big one for so many people who maybe never experienced these thoughts, these feelings, are now really struggling. So I really appreciate you sharing your insights, Smriti. And you're so right. Yeah, I mean, diversity, inclusion, belonging is a huge element of mental health, feeling like you can belong and being in a safe space, an inclusive space. So I'd like to just open up the floor, Smriti, to any questions that people may have for you, again, on a really important topic. Harshit did mention a question, which I will read for you, Smriti. He said, as it is all based mainly on AI, so to be more real, it is major portion to get more connected with human works on NLP. So focusing more on NLP.
Yeah, so I'm not an expert in NLP. I work with deep learning most of the time, but yes, NLP can do so much when it comes to mental health, like understanding like machine language translation. There's like so much scope when it comes to NLP and AI, but I unfortunately can't stress too much on it because I don't know that much about NLP.
Thank you for sharing, Smriti. Completely appreciate that. And I guess from your perspective, how do you feel that AI could be used to manage stress and manage anxieties more so?
So, okay, that's super interesting. So, like in my opinion, the best example of this would be depression and anxiety in children. There are unfortunately children who are like 5 or 8 years old and they suffer from depression and anxiety, and they can't even express what they're feeling. So there's been a lot of research that's been going on, and I came across a journal from biomedical and health informatics, and it was focused on machine learning algorithm or the AI algorithm, which detects the sign of depression and anxiety through speech patterns. So it can be like obviously effective for adults as well, but it's like more useful for young children, and it can provide fast and easy diagnosis, which is often difficult to pinpoint and is overlooked. So, reports state that 1 in 5 children undergo anxiety and depression, popularly known as internalizing disorder. So, as children under the age of 8, they often can't explain their emotion, their suffering. Adults need to be more cautious and understand their problems related to mental health. Also, long queues for appointments with psychologists, incapability of detecting the problem, etc. All this, when it comes together, it makes the child miss out on the needed treatment. So the issue raised urgency, obviously, for researchers to work on this. And when it comes to US, for example, like Kat can probably tell how expensive the treatment is. So that's also another problem, right? So many people, they can't afford the treatment. Like when you're in Europe, you're a lot more luckier because you don't have to worry so much about that. But it's bad, and also the waiting times for like talking to psychologists. I was talking to Mike McCarthy. I did some interviews with him on my YouTube channel, and it was so sad to hear his story. How he lost his son Ross, who fought depression for 10 years, and he said that once his son was they told him that okay, he's at this stage where he was in a very bad state, but then he was asked to wait for 6 months and then come back after 6 months, and that's when he couldn't take it. So like when we have chatbots, or when we have like these virtual systems, they can help us continuously talk, and if we integrate it with like a more so imagine like you have some device with yourself, maybe like a external device or your smartphone or anything, and you continuously chat with them, and then it's also integrated with like a psychiatrist or a professional who gets like the readings, and if someone's like stressed, or if someone's like trying to OD, or like someone who's not able to manage their stress, the third party psychologist or a professional, they can like understand it obviously in more details, and they can help them. It'll also reduce all the stress that they have been going through. Also, like I think empathy, also AI empathy, like artificial empathy, it also plays a very important role in managing stress, and again, taking the burden off healthcare people right now. It's so much. I think that's another thing that the pandemic taught us, right? Like the
Yeah.
stress healthcare workers.
For sure, because I think a big thing with mental health also is some people do need that 24/7 support, and sometimes people, they can't get it. For example, here in the UK, we do have phone lines you can call, but some people will be calling and waiting and waiting and waiting, and not having any positive response from them. So do you think that AI could at some point provide that 24-hour circulational care?
Yeah. So like when it comes to as I said, like virtual chatbots, or another example like artificial empathy. So if we have like um, that, and but the thing is that like human intelligence is not as same as artificial intelligence, and hence human empathy is not as same as artificial empathy. But then empathy is the one thing humanity thrives on, is what I think, and I like to believe. So like if we have these virtual systems that can help us communicate, and like some diseases like amnesia or dementia, so then the mental health providers or practitioners, they need, as you said, like they need constant care, and
Yeah.
it's very draining for them also, like to look after such patients. And yeah, I can totally understand why. So in that case, they can have like a virtual system who they can communicate with, and then they can get assistance from them. And when it's like urgently required, or when it's not managed by the virtual systems, is when the professionals could come in, like professionals could come in. But then also this requires a lot of research and a lot of importance, like understanding of ethics and empathy, and Maslow's hierarchy of self-actualization, emotional intelligence. It's like so many things, but it's a really good application. And I think AI in healthcare is like amazing, and it's going to do so much in both physical and mental health care. Yeah. And I
Yeah.
think the day we stop distinguishing, like we don't have to say mental health, right? We just like one word, healthcare should be the word that defines both. So I think that's what we should be looking for, right?
Yeah. I mean, Smriti, your passion for making a positive change in this space is forever inspiring to me. And for anyone who isn't following Smriti, I definitely recommend on LinkedIn. Some of her posts are really powerful when they touch on such important things. So thank you so much, Smriti, for today, for your presentation, and for, again, addressing such an important topic.
And thank you so much, Ellie. You were the reason why I started using LinkedIn. So
Stop it. But right, so let's try third time lucky with Kat Anderson. So Kat, I have everything crossed for you right now. We can make this happen. Please, Tech for Good, work your magic.
Yes.
And,
yeah, actually, I mean, I think it actually worked out, because listening, to everybody's full presentations, it's kind of going to come full circle here between Christian talking about the X-ray vision, and then Smriti and Prayson talking about mental health. Like, we're going to pull it all together. So I think everything worked out as it normally does. So thank you so much, all of you, for being patient. So I'm not going to, I think you kind of get the gist of the story. I'll give you a review, a real quick one. Basically, my doctor said that I could have cancer because they found a suspicious lump. I was astonished by the fact that cancer could be caused by things that are in our everyday foods and products, even things that are labeled all natural and even organic sometimes. And the reason why is because regulators allow known carcinogens into these products if they're found in trace amounts. And the problem with that is, though, is in trace amounts, you're thinking about a trace amount here, a trace amount there. We all use a multiple amount of products every day. We eat a multitude of different things every day. And so a trace amount here, a trace amount there can accumulate and end up leading to numerous health conditions, including cancer. And so that's where I left it, I think, the last time. And so my reaction was, well, just send me this list, and so I can, compare whatever these toxins are to what I'm using and figure out, to make sure I'm not ingesting these allowed carcinogens. And she explained to me that there is no master list. And even if there was, there's hundreds upon thousands of these toxins. There's no way a human being could possibly, even if they had a list, reasonably go into a store and compare, cross-reference this list with the ingredient labels. But if you've ever faced a potential cancer diagnosis or anything like that, you kind of you go into a different mode than being just reasonable, right? You are in sort of the survival mode. And I just thought, well, I can't just sit back and do nothing. I have to do something. And so I was a news reporter at the time, and I decided to just sort of take this on as like my personal investigative report, right? And approached it just that way. You talk to experts in disease and toxicology, cross-reference different studies and publications, verified sources, and started basically organizing and categorizing different toxins, and then going back into my apartment and checking out some of the products that I was using. So if you want, we can share my presentation right now, and I will show you what I found. Let's see if this is gonna work. All right, choose what to share. There we go.
We can see your screen, Kat.
Okay, great. All right.
So it's just a blank screen right now.
Do you see my PowerPoint?
We can just see a black screen.
Oh, okay, hang on. All right, well, we're just leaving people in suspense, right? Hang on. This is all part of the magic. This
It
all
really is.
and all right, you know what? I'm just gonna share the entire screen. Share. Okay, how about now? Yes. Can you see?
Yes, we can see.
Okay.
Done.
All right. Are you seeing the shampoo bottle?
Yes.
All right. Perfect. Okay. So this is what I went into my shower and I turned the shampoo bottle around. Remember, so now I have my little list, and you can see how difficult this would be to decipher. So I'm just going to save you guys some time. And you can also see, though, too, why I thought this was an okay product. It says alcohol-free, paraben-free. But then I came across this ingredient, DMDM hydantin. Okay, so this is a preservative that gives your shampoo a longer shelf life. And it works very similar to how we would preserve a dead body. That's right. So this toxin actually releases small amounts of formaldehyde into the shampoo to make it last longer. And then you put that on your scalp, or I was putting it on mine. And as we all know, like, our skin is our largest organ. And again, I don't know about you, but I was showering every day, still do. And so I was exposing my body to these trace amounts, but over and over and over again. And formaldehyde, as many of us know, is a well-known carcinogen. And also exposure to it may increase our chances of having fertility problems or a miscarriage. Also, this just in, there is a big investigation here in the United States. A huge class action lawsuit was filed against a major beauty company because they use this exact ingredient in a shampoo, and people across the country were complaining that it is causing their hair to fall out. So you can see that toxins affect people in many different ways, and they're negative. Very negative, even in trace amounts. All right, so let's go to the kitchen. This is one of my favorite snacks. I ate them all the time because I thought they were healthy, 100% whole wheat. I looked through the ingredients. I was surprised and really not happy with a lot of the hidden sugars that were there, especially, I couldn't wait to tell my diabetic friends to watch out for this. But even, then there was something beyond the ingredients that was alarming, and it was this. It's BHT. So BHT is a nickname for what's known as butylated hydroxytoluene. All right, so you know what this stuff does? It's an endocrine disruptor. And basically what that means is it disrupts your hormones. So it's been shown to disrupt thyroid gland function, which I know a lot of us know this, that if you're having trouble losing weight and getting rid of excess unhealthy weight, and you're trying to do all the right things and you just keep hitting walls, a lot of times it's because there's something wrong with your thyroid. It's not functioning properly. Also, reduced fertility, altered growth and development, impaired learning, and motor behaviors have also been observed in vivo, which just means in living organisms. Also, endocrine disruptors, because they affect your hormones, can lead to hormone-related cancers, such as ovarian cancer, breast cancer, and prostate cancer. All right, then there's a whole other category. It's called neurotoxins, and so they affect your brain, which is, again, what Smriti was just talking about, teed this up perfectly. And so it can lead to anxiety, depression, attention deficit, even Alzheimer's. And these are all found in our foods and products in trace amounts that, again, can accumulate. All right. So as I was going through this, right, I get the cancer test back. It comes back negative, thank goodness, right? So yeah, I don't have cancer. But then the weight of the world was on my shoulders at that point, because I didn't want to develop any of these other health conditions either. And I love the way Smriti put it too. Like, I'm not even going to call them mental disorders. It's health. It's all health conditions. And I didn't want my loved ones to develop any of these, painful and expensive conditions either. And so, as a reporter, I was kind of reporting back and letting people know about certain things, and as trying to be not as annoying as possible, but letting them know, if I had a friend who was having trouble conceiving a child, you should probably look out for this, and you should check a label for this. And, a friend who's having trouble losing weight, you might want to look out for this ingredient, and a cancer diagnosis, definitely avoid this. And then they were coming back to me with their own texts of like, hey, can you look at this label? Can you look at this label? Cat, can you scan this? Cat, can you scan this? Cat, can you scan this? So hence, that's where I was going back to the part of the origin of the word CAT scan is like, Cat, can you scan this? And I was trying so hard, right? But these labels, one label would take me weeks to decipher properly, to talk to all the experts, right? And you're going around and around, and I just was not scratching the surface. And it was super frustrating because, again, I didn't have a cancer diagnosis, but then when you have someone who has, like, now officially has a cancer diagnosis, or is even a cancer survivor, and they don't want to put anything in their bodies that could cause a recurrence. They're not messing around with or gambling on a trace of this is A-okay and certain, no. Or even an expectant mother, right? They have a baby inside them whose brain is developing, their little fingers and toes. They are not taking a chance on traces of anything. And so they're dealing with this level of stress just looking at these ingredient labels. And I was barely scratching the surface. And then, so there was that joke going around, there's got to be an app for that. There's an app for that. And so I thought for sure there was, because this is such, this affects so many people. And so I searched, and unfortunately, all the apps that are out there either have inaccurate information and or are just incredibly cumbersome to use. So you have to type in each product one by one, and chances are they don't even have that product in their database. And or you can use to scan each product's barcode, which doesn't sound like a big deal until you actually do it. So like just trying to find a spaghetti sauce, right? Just scanning the barcodes one by one, and you saw how many there were. So what ended up happening is here I am scanning one by one. 45 minutes later, I'm not even through 2 shelves. I haven't found a spaghetti sauce that I feel comfortable eating. And so I'm about to give up, and I'm just thinking, okay, I thought that maybe the 14th one that I scanned was the best one out of all of them, but this one, it's like 38th, and it fits better in my budget. So maybe I should just get this one. To put it like shortly, I was completely frazzled. And if we're trying to reduce the stress, the stress that you already have when you're trying to battle a life-threatening condition, this is doing the opposite. And so I just thought to myself, I guess I just have to create this app myself. Everyone's creating apps at the time. I thought, how hard can it be? Well, at least for this app in this subject, it is extremely hard. Just dealing with the toxin and ingredient aspect of this alone, I realized this was something that I had to take on full time. And there's definitely a reason why no one has done this yet. I mean, you have to be just tenacious and relentless and have this crazy passion for letting people know how to take control, like how to basically empower them to take back control of their lives. And so thankfully I have all of those personality traits, and I couldn't give up. There's too many people that need this. And then, so a little bit of time has passed, and then the Pokemon craze happened. And then I just thought, oh my gosh, how is it that we can put Pokemon any place on the planet, all right? But we can't put Pokemon on our phone to poke out, and point out which products in the store have toxins and which ones don't. And I know that's, for those of you who understand AR and everything, it's a very simplified version, but I'm just sort of taking you down the path. And then slowly, like the light bulb went off when I was taking a picture of a friend, and that little square popped up over her face so the camera could focus in on it. And I thought, yes, that's facial recognition. And we can do that with image recognition instead of faces, though, with things like spaghetti sauces. And what if we put up those boxes over all those spaghetti sauces and it gave us like this instant readout of what is inside those products? Okay. So that is exactly how CAT scan works. So let's say you're trying to find some chicken nuggets that aren't full of toxins. And so you go to the store shelf, and you open up your CAT scan app, and you just hold your phone up to the shelf as if you're about to take a picture, or it doesn't have to be a physical shelf. I know a lot of us are shopping online because of the pandemic. So if you have your computer screen up, all you need is the image and it'll recognize it. And those sorts of boxes will pop up over each product, and they're all color coded. All right, and so here's how the ratings work. So those in the green zone either have 0 toxins or very little, and you can see there's a sliding scale. And those more in the red zone, that's where you begin to build up, where it has more and more toxins or substances that could be adverse to your health. And then if you want to find out why a particular product got the rating that it did, you can just tap the image on your phone, and the product details pop up to let you know what was flagged, both positive and negative. So in this case, this particular product had no trans fats. And that's great because trans fats can elevate your risk of developing heart disease and stroke. But it also contains Red 40, which contains benzidine in most cases, which is a known carcinogen. And you can see each piece of information is linked directly to a source that's verified. And all of our sources come from around the world because, as a lot of us are aware, there are certain countries and organizations that are more lenient than others. And again, CAT scan is coming through the lens of that cancer patient, a cancer survivor, that expectant mom, or anyone else, frankly, who doesn't want to gamble on putting a trace of anything in their bodies, frankly, if they can avoid everything, from infertility to hair loss to diabetes to cancer. Okay, so then we built our panel of epidemiologists, and we collaborated with them and figured out a way where we could rate and score products to scale. So we're talking about hundreds of thousands of products at a time. So we went from something that was completely overwhelming to now an app that was within reach. All we needed now was that last little piece, right? That computer vision and AR piece that would recognize the each individual product. All right, so what we did is we raised a bunch of money, and we asked for recommendations on some development firms, and we hired one that came highly recommended. And after almost 2 years of weekly, sometimes twice a week meetings with them, we were so excited, like getting down to the deadline, the delivery date. They said it was almost ready, and that. Long story short, when it came down to that day, what they delivered, the app did not work. And by did not work, did not work at all. Like, you could not even sign up a new user. So as you can imagine, it was simply heart-wrenching. And on top of it, what even made it worse is, we were paying this development company month by month. And at that point, after almost 2 years, we were out of money. So devastating, right? And we can stop sharing the screen at this point. And I'll tell you where we've landed now. So now we just thought, okay, now what, right? And we are trying to recover our losses, but knowing that can take a while, and knowing that people need this app now. They needed it yesterday. They needed it 5-10 years ago. We're trying to look for creative ways to move forward and actually start the development of the computer vision and AR side. And so thankfully, there was an extremely talented software engineer who came forward, heard about what we were doing, understood our financial constraints, and said, hey, I love this mission. I love what you're doing. Can I work for you for free? I have some spare time. And we said, yes, of course. Thank you. That would be wonderful. And so, within a couple of months, we had an actual proof of concept, and now we have a roadmap of where we're going, and we're trying to build a team that can develop this out. And so that's why, Ellie, as you know, I was a little reluctant to come on this panel. I was very transparent with you and let you know, and you had a great point. Because all these other speakers, they have something that's functioning, that's working now in society and helping people. And you had a great point. You said, if you want support in creative ideas and ways to move forward, this is going to be your audience. And so thank you so much for that encouragement. And so, as vulnerable as I feel right now, I'm just said, okay, I'm just going to throw this out, as they say, to the universe, which apparently you guys are now the universe in terms of what we're trying to do and move forward. And so just letting you know, we have a number of different ideas working. One of them is working with a university. Doesn't have to be here in the United States, anywhere in the world where there's a talented group of software engineering students who are passionate about computer vision and health, and maybe need a senior design project idea and want something on their resume that is going to change millions of people's lives and maybe future employment with our company. And then again, any other people out there who are really dedicated to this mission, understanding our financial constraints, and have some spare time to join our development team. And then also, we're looking for investors as well. If any of this resonates with any of you, if you work for a university, you attend one, you have spare time, you have an idea, we are open to everything. And so I think it's interesting, because as big of a setback as it was, and as hard as it was when we were in that moment of just stillness, I think now, coming out of the other end, I think the positive in this is going to be, if people come on board at this stage, like, we are going to end up with the most passionate and personally invested people, and end up with a foundation, a team that's going to set the tone and the atmosphere for the company, like, moving forward, right? We're going to have mission-driven, passion-driven people. So, I know there's a lot of talk about toxic work environments, we're going to have one of the healthiest work environments because people are going to be so focused on helping people. So I think that's going to be the positive side of all this. We're going to be, eliminating toxins in all senses of the word. And so, yeah, if this resonates with any of you, or if you have any ideas, you can find me on LinkedIn. I think we're going to put that in the comments, the link to that. Just message me, or you can email me. My email address is right there, kat@catscanapp.com. So thank you so much for listening, and for letting me tell my story.
Thank you, Kat. Thank you for being so open and transparent with the current situation. I think CatScan's mission is absolutely incredible. I wish I was an expert in computer vision and AR so I could give you my time and work on this mission, because it is so important. So for anyone out there who is interested, please feel free to reach out to Kat. And now we're opening up for questions. So again, we want to hear from you. Please feel free to send them through. Something that I want to ask, Kat, is you mentioned that these toxins are so prevalent. What if there's nothing in the store that registers in the green or the non-toxic range? What's the solution for people who find themselves in that scenario?
Okay, so this is my favorite part of the app, because again, we were thinking too, like, what if the food supply is just completely toxic? How prevalent is this? And the last thing we want to do is, again, stress people out even more if there's nothing available right in front of them, or if everything is available, but it all comes up in the red zone. So think back to that, the chicken nuggets aisle. If everything comes up red and orange, we don't want you to be frustrated that you can only eat, lettuce and tomatoes, right? You want chicken nuggets. And so we're going to have this, it's an alternative feature, an alternative products feature, and all you have to do is like, okay, I'm not finding what I need in front of me. You click the button, and we're gonna pull up a list of chicken nuggets for you that fall into the green zone that you can buy from online retailers. And the beauty of this is, because of the pandemic, even brick and mortar stores who didn't have even an online platform now do, even if you have to just pick it up curbside. So now there's even more, if you don't have like an Amazon Fresh, or you don't, there's just so much more, there's so many more opportunities. And so, yeah, you just click it, put it in your cart, boom. And then, we can bring it, you can have it delivered or pick it up curbside. So we're really, really excited about that. And also, by the way, whenever all of these scores, whenever we vet any of these, nothing will ever be skewed or changed due to any advertising dollars at all. Like, the whole point is for this to be pure and just, completely truthful. So we'll never skew our scores based on anything like that. And because obviously, if once it just would be wrong ethically, A, and B, I mean, the whole point of this is to help people. So yeah, there's no amount of money that could help, that would make us skew our score. So you can definitely trust us. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a really cool feature and so helpful. And as someone myself, I mean, I have a bit of a gluten and dairy intolerance. So does CatScan give users the ability to customize the app, so that if, for instance, they want to drastically reduce their intake of, sodium, dairy, or a particular material that isn't necessarily a toxin?
Yes, so absolutely. So not on its initial rollout, because we want to get this out as soon as possible. And frankly, it's the one size fits all. So think about like when Uber first came out, it was like, let's just get from point A to point B, and that's still going to be amazing. So our first rollout, the one size fits all, the beauty of that is that it really does address so many conditions that we didn't even know that we had in mind going into this when we created it. It was mainly cancer oriented. And then as we started building our epidemiological team and talking to medical experts, it was wild. Like, people, a doctor would say, oh my gosh, this is going to help my Crohn's patients. Oh, you're filtering for this. This is going to help my epileptic patients and reduce their seizures. So that's what's interesting about toxins, is they, something that causes cancer in me might cause infertility in the next person, that might cause hair loss in the next one. And so these toxins, I mean, they're all bad results, but they manifest themselves differently in our bodies. But the point is, eliminating them in a one-size-fits-all feature is going to tackle so many issues. But then, yes, the second, like the 2.0 version, is going to allow you to customize and not only add in if you have a peanut allergy or you want to, you're avoiding gluten or dairy, but also even socially conscious choices. So I know a lot of people out there avoid using products that contain palm oil because of the effects of deforestation in rainforests, or you only want to buy free trades. You're going to be able to customize that and enter that in so that that is flagged as part of your products. We have so many ideas for so many filters, and we're really excited about that.
Wow, the possibilities are endless. I'm excited when this all kicks off and to see the different versions that you're going to throw in, Kat. And I mean, there are going to be product manufacturers that aren't really going to be happy, I guess, with the ratings of some of their products. So how do you plan to address these complaints?
Yes, so that was one of the biggest things that we wanted to make sure that we were addressing this correctly. And we have a fantastic legal team. And that's the beauty of CAT scan, is that we're not saying product A is good and product B is bad, right? We are just simply reading off, to put it very simply, taking an ingredient and aligning it with scientific sources, and we're just regurgitating information. We don't have a lab set up. We're not testing anything. We have no opinions whatsoever. We're just taking an ingredient and telling you what this source and this source and this source says about it, and then allowing the consumer to decide what they want to do with that information. And I mean, that's the whole point of having ingredient labels in the first place, is to supposedly to make things transparent, right? So that consumers do know what they're ingesting. And they're just so hard to read right now. And we're basically just streamlining the process. And then B, I think what's really been interesting about this whole thing is that what we're finding out is that mentality is sort of an old school mentality. You'd be surprised, a lot of big corporations really want to be transparent to their consumers, because why? That builds customer trust, that builds customer loyalty, and a loyal customer is going to help with your profit margins. So they want to build that trust. And I think what's going to happen is that I think it's become so standard practice, these toxins, they don't even think about it. And so I think once they understand the toxicity, like they don't want to, I really don't think that these manufacturers want to create a product that they don't feel safe giving to their own families. And I think so once they become aware, and they can, and now they can substitute with natural non-toxic ingredients, which is very, very easy. I shouldn't say easy, but it's doable, okay? Yeah. You have to just stray from the standard practice, but it's doable. And I think that's what's gonna end up happening. And I think they're going to end up, thanking us like, hey, thanks. Like, I want to build a better product, and I want to build this customer loyalty and this customer relationship. So I think that's going to be the route that most companies are going to go.
Yeah, that's really interesting for them to look at it through a different lens.
Yeah.
And turn it around in a positive light. And finally, what about people who don't have smartphones, who want access to this information?
Yes. Okay. So, and this was, again, one of personally my biggest concerns, because I actually, I grew up in an extremely low income household, and, didn't have access to a computer it's an embarrassing amount of time. I mean, I don't think I had a computer until I was 25. And so I understand the constraints. And I also, being in that position where there's long stretches of time where you don't have access to healthcare, and I know that's kind of unique to the United States, but it happens. Where prevention is everything, because if you do go down the line and you don't take care of yourself and eliminate these things, and you end up with a diagnosis of something, that treatment could put you under forever. So it's even more important in those situations. And so we started thinking about this. One of the first initiatives that we're going to do right out of the gate, so short term, is going to be working with either getting sponsorships from makers of phones and or working through like donation and phone recycling programs and giving those and, you know, distributing them through underserved communities. And then long term, again, as we were talking about, as companies become more aware of how their current formulas of products are affecting people, and as they change, it's going to change the entire landscape of what's on our shelves. So eventually, in a couple of years, right, it's the invisible hand of economics. If people aren't buying something because they know that it's toxic, the manufacturers aren't going to continue to make that product. And so eventually, it's going to evolve the entire, you know, food and product supply. I mean, that's going to take a while, but to the point where you're not going to even need a smartphone. You're just going to be a beneficiary of more, you know, less toxic products just being in more abundance on shelves. So we're really excited about this. When I say like changing millions of lives, it's going to be short term and long term. Yeah, and we're really excited about this movement. We just need, you know, that last piece of technology to do good.
That is fantastic, Kat, and you will get there. You will get there. I'm very, very confident, and I'm excited to follow the journey, to continue following CatScan's journey. I have to say, I'm feeling incredibly inspired this evening with all of the speakers, all of the talks. So thank you, everyone, for your time. I think we're going to bring everyone back up onto our screen as we wrap up this final event. So it's been such a pleasure, and thank you to everyone.